My screen now. It says I have to share. I've sent the request to share my screen.
Ah, okay, yeah, right. If I make you a co-host, probably that would work then better. Could you please try to share now?
hmm Yep. And then
Amazing, now it's working.
you
If you
should
make it
see.
full screen, I think everything would look better.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, but we see your browser.
Yeah, I tried this out yesterday. I'm not sure how to get rid of that. Like this little
Um,
top bar, right? It's just the top.
exactly. Is it
But are
in
the
the
slides moving?
Yes, yes, it's probably. Is
Okay.
it in the on the Google Drive? Your slides are on Google
It's
Drive?
on Google Slides.
Google Slides. Okay. So I have no idea, like because usually I download the slides and then use them, but it's for me it's totally fine if it's fine for
Okay.
you.
Yeah, it works for me because that way I have the presenter view with my notes and
Okay,
everything.
perfect. Good, 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 good. Okay, great. And we are recording the session as I told you because usually in many people cannot join the internal webinars because they're like around the world and they're appreciating that we can send a recording to them
Okay,
as
yeah.
well.
Could I have
And
the access to the recording too?
yes, yes, you will.
Awesome.
Do you get our newsletter?
I don't, and I apologize. I wasn't aware that there was a registration. I had no
Oh,
idea, and I thought because you said internal that it meant I couldn't advertise it or I couldn't invite others to show. I thought maybe it was just the network. I wasn't sure how that worked.
yeah. Actually, the internal webinars are only for network members, but
Mhm.
like we always like, of course, the speakers um, are more than welcome to invite anyone they want. Like,
Oh,
but only
okay.
the speakers. We are not opening it for because it's supposed to be a very safe space for everyone to just share ideas and be sure that like it's internal.
Right.
But yeah, that's only. But it's actually please like after the webinar, I admit people to come in after the webinar. Let's talk about that you get the emails because we send an
Yeah.
invitation and the newsletter, so you should have received it actually twice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll check why it didn't happen later.
Okay, sure.
Okay, great. Hello everyone, welcome. So I would suggest that we wait maybe 2 minutes before we start. So if anyone is late, can also join the presentation.
Mhm.
Um, Hi, Hania.
Hi.
Yeah, it's I don't know where everyone is based right now. It's super hot. I'm in Berlin. It's super hot here. Like people are just trying to survive. I guess like it's also like this in France and many parts of Europe. So yeah, I'm not sure.
It's same here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's very, very hot.
What is the temperature?
Today is milder. I don't even check anymore because just like it's hot. I'm 28 right now, but like on
That is
Sunday we had 40-degree in Berlin, which was like, oh my God.
wow.
How is it in New York? You're based in New York, are you right?
It is going to be 91 degrees, so let me try and
Oh.
let me try and translate that into Celsius. That is 32 degrees today.
Oh, okay.
So it's
So
on a lower end.
I can't complain. Okay. Hello everyone, welcome.
Hello.
I see that more people are joining us. We just like we said, we just wait like 1 or 2 minutes to let everyone arrive.
Mhm.
But I guess we can start because we are recording the session. Anyone who can join us later can maybe later watch the recording as well. Hello everyone. My name is Samira. I guess everyone knows me, or most of people. I'm network. I'm a member of the executive committee of the network, and usually I organize these webinars. So today we're having an internal webinar. It means that only network members are invited to this webinar, and we're having a great speaker. I'm so excited to have Aerielle here today. I was very happy when she accepted to have a presentation in our internal network. I find her area of work very interesting, and interesting enough, we have been based in one city at some point, like and we haven't met each other, and that's, I think, like happening to me sometimes, that we are all busy with different projects, with different teaching activities, whatever, and we don't have this time to get together and just talk about our research. And these internal webinars are giving us this opportunity to come together with like-minded researchers and other people to talk about our favorite topics. So yeah, I'm very happy to have Aerielle here today, and everyone else. So I would say let's start listening to her presentation and get to know more about her research. Aerielle, I stop here and let you talk about yourself and your research. And at the end of the presentation, we are having time for questions.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me okay and see the screen before I start talking? Perfect. So, hi, my name is Ariel. I actually completed my master's in Berlin, funny enough, at Academy of Modern Design. So I was just there and I left last year. So I didn't learn much German. It was in English. I get that question a lot. I cannot speak German very well. But it was in sustainability and fashion and creative industries. And during that time, I completed a thesis on redefining growth. And since then, that thesis has now become something that I'm presenting, and now I'm actually going to be submitting for a journal submission later this summer. So I'm very excited to be talking about it today. And I did present on this in person in the network conference last year in October, so you may have seen some of this, but I'm going to be talking about something that I call non-extractive value. And this is a concept that I've created, and I'm going to be talking about specifically its impact on resilience. And I'm going to be taking a little bit more of a comprehensive angle with that today. So I think we can all agree, and coming into this topic of growth and fashion and sustainability, right? That fashion has been searching for a new definition of what growth means or new value, and one that moves traditionally away from extracting natural resources to chase financial profit. And I think that shift is very visible from Textile Exchange's Reimagining Growth report, which I would highly recommend you all read. There's degrowth conversations happening in publications like Vogue, which is great. And there's the infamous Earth Logic Fashion Action Research Plan, which is my personal favorite. But I think there's a visible shift from both academia and the industry side, and they're pointing in that same direction of redefining and relooking at what does growth mean. But here's the reality check. Fashion desperately needs resilience. Supply chains are increasingly fragile under climate pressure. Legislation is now asking brands to prove that they're prepared somehow for this future, right? But sustainability is still contributing to the bottom line in ways that are genuinely hard to measure. So, what I take from all this is that fashion has a measurement problem. We want a new idea of a dream value where we have this aspiration of moving away from traditional growth, but we're lacking, and the sustainable value in this dream is lacking a clear measurable impact. And one of the ways to measure that impact is on resilience. But how do we do this? So to answer that question, I broke it down into two variables. And the first variable is value. So I looked across the diaspora of sustainable business models and value creation and post-growth economics. So some things called degrowth or the well-being economy. And I asked, okay, if a fashion business or a fashion organization existed in every single one of these economies or in every single one of these models, what value do they actually offer? Right? What do they create? What is it that they're giving society or their consumers? And I found that none of these models were a complete answer in and of themselves, right? They each have advantages and disadvantages. But I found that they shared something in common. And this value creation that they share is something that I like to call non-extractive value. Now, this is value or a benefit that a firm or an organization can provide that is not economically measured, or it doesn't have to be, and it deviates from resource extraction. So those are a lot of fancy words, but what that essentially means is that these methods are some things that we already seen before. These are things like our rental programs for clothing. These are things like our educational workshops or local community events. These are things like our employee ownership structures and how different parts of the supply chain can actually have different methods of how they operate by employees instead of shareholders. These are things like using decreased production as a success metric, which I find very interesting. Imagine a business quantifying their success with how much less that they make. And regenerative agriculture projects. So these are all examples of how brands or fashion businesses or fashion organizations, how they can create value without resource extraction or a focus on sole financial profit. The second variable of that first problem is resilience. And I found an academic definition that genuinely shifted my thinking here. And it's called organizational resilience. Now, this source empirically tested this with a bunch of different organizations, and they found that it's actually a process. It's a process of developing capabilities, reconfiguring resources, creating and reshaping relationships, and even transforming from crises as a result. So they found this across 5 different dimensions. And I know this looks a little complicated, but let's walk through it. So resilience is not just one part of financial profit or keeping the lights on or running the business. It's things like having good capital habits. So saving money and staying out of debt as a business, right? It's preparing for the future. It's strategic resilience. Do you have a vision for where you're going in the next 5 to 10 years? It's things like your relationships and your cultural resilience. And it's also how you learn, how you adapt, and how you grow as a business. So, unlike common thought on how fashion needs to just stay resilient and keep on running and keep on producing, resilience is actually a sum of multiple working parts. And some of these parts are emotional and even really just human. So, I have 2 theoretical variables here for my problem. I have non-extractive value and I have organizational resilience. Now, we know fashion needs a new way of thinking about growth and value, but we also know it needs a clear, measurable impact on resilience. So this led to my question. How does non-extractive value impact the organizational resilience of fashion brands? In other words, how does this value that we want to create, this dream idea of non-traditional growth, how does it impact the way that businesses run? And what is the advantages of doing and offering this type of value? So for the executive summary, this study ran in 2 stages. First is something called, or I like to call, the defining stage. So here I was exploring what does NEV, what does non-extractive value mean, and what are its potential impacts. So this was part literature review, which you kind of just saw, and 8 expert interviews that I've identified in the sustainable fashion space. After those interviews, after that defining stage of what is this type of value, I then went on to measure it. So here I conducted a pilot brand survey with 5 participants, and I had follow-up interviews with 3 of those brands. And overall, the results did support my initial hypothesis. Non-extractive value can enhance resilience. So there was 7 out of 8 dimensions. So I added 2 dimensions from the previous 5, the capital, the learning, the emotional. And I found that 7 out of 8 averaged above the neutral midpoint of 3.0. The strongest impacts in resilience specifically were in the cultural, the learning, and the long-term strategic resilience, plus a new dimension that I added myself, personal resilience. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's walk through the findings, starting with the expert interviews. So I first interviewed 8 sustainable fashion experts, and experts I identified as professors, consultants, and professionals. And these were across the UK, the EU, and the US. That is a lot of acronyms. But 3 key findings emerged from this. And the first is that when we're talking about a new type of value and a new way of operating requires new capabilities. So, as one expert said, value creation is not just a number. Consider all the things a business can do to make a positive impact. These things shouldn't just be in the sustainability strategy, it should be how they operate. So, here, sustainability and value creation are tied together. Value creation isn't just isolated into a new sustainability plan or even the business model plan. We need to develop the habit of asking, who is this value for? And a lot of the experts said the same thing. They're constantly asking, who is this value that you're creating? Who is it for? Is it for the interns of your business? Is it for the labor unions? Is it for your neighboring companies? Who is it for? Second is that limitations exist, both tactically and emotionally. So I think we can all agree that there are operational challenges in implementing things like a repair program or investing in your supply chain. But there's also emotional limitations to this. And this one expert explained how burnout is something they talk about a lot because they're asked to balance capitalism with ecological destruction. And no one person is going to be able to do that. I don't know about you, but I can't do it either. So it's possible that things like this type of value, this aspirational idea of growth, it could already increase the overwhelm that we're facing, right? But there is hope. Last, I found that NEV, or non-extractive value, can enhance resilience in those five dimensions that I previously showed, the capital, the strategic, the learning, plus two new dimensions, climate and personal resilience. This one expert was explaining how, yes, they're overwhelmed by the immensity of work that's in front of them to move towards true sustainable systems, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be contributing or shouldn't have hope. So despite its difficulty, the experts were describing how NEV or a future fashion system beyond extraction, it actually inspires a deeper emotional and motivational persistence. So in other words, NEV gives something to people that it makes them want to move forward. It makes them want to go to work and do the tasks and believe in something that's bigger than themselves day by day. And I have to admit that this inspired me as a researcher going into this subject. It's it's hard work as sustainability professionals. I'm sure all of us on this call can agree. And if we have something that moves us towards a larger goal, I'm all for it. Now, the second step after the defining and talking about NEB and what it can mean was the pilot brand survey. Ooh, my screen just froze. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
But
Okay. Oh, wait, we're back.
okay, okay.
I'm good. Okay. Yes. So the second part was the pilot survey. And for this, I had five brands. I had one large corporation of fashion or an incumbent in the industry. I had three small to medium-sized businesses, and I had one social enterprise. And I had three activities on this survey. And the first question was rating on a 1 to 5 scale, five meaning the most, you do this all the time. What NEV methods does your business offer or does your organization offer? So, do you have events? Do you put on repair programs? What do you got? And the second was asking how important they are to you. And I think this was interesting because then this got into a little bit more of the qualitative side of yes, you do this, but how significant is it to you and how significant is it to your organization? And it was interesting, a lot of businesses said that things were more important than they were actually doing them. So they had higher scores for question two than question one. And this does signal an implementation gap, which we can talk about in a little bit for the limitations. The third thing I asked them was on a scale of 1 to 5, again, rating from strongly disagree to strongly agree, of what areas of resilience are most affected. And I had them rate different statements. So, for example, for cultural sustainability, I had the statement applying these initiatives shapes our organization's culture to reflect a strong commitment to sustainability. And they would either strongly disagree or strongly agree. And here are the results for those questions. So here in the blue, you can see the brand average of all five brands, and this is kind of a spider chart of all seven dimensions. And some of the dimensions I split into two different statements just to try and get more specific. And the highest scoring areas were learning resilience or developing new skills. So non-extractive value highly impacts them learning new skills. It also impacts their long-term strategy, how they build a vision for that future and a plan and execute that. So strategic resilience. And it also highly impacted their cultural resilience on the inside, them making a purpose and committing to a purpose for sustainability. So this confirms that non-extractive values' deepest impact is actually internal. It's how brands think, it's how they commit to new things, and it's how they build new habits. Now, interestingly, personal resilience was at a midpoint of 3.6. So this was that emotional persistence and that motivation, right? 3 out of 5 brands noticed a real difference in this persistence. And so it can appear that non-extractive value inspires a larger sense of purpose, of working towards a larger goal. On the lower end, though, we have shock preparedness and capital resilience. So these were how businesses were financially prepared for the future or prepared for shocks and crises. The lowest score was climate resilience, actually, or specifically reducing resource use. So I split climate resilience into 2 statements. There was ecological resilience, so applying these initiatives enhances our ecological impacts or our surrounding environment. And the second one, which was the lowest scoring, was these initiatives reduce our resource use. So there's 2 reasons for this to happen. Non-extractive value may not impact these areas as much as they do cultural, learning, strategic, for example. Or it could be that brands aren't understanding the impact of their activities. They're not drawing the line between their daily actions and their tasks towards what impact is this actually creating? Are they preparing for the future? Is this helping them kind of look forward to reducing resource use? That connection isn't there. So that brings us to this conversation of limitations and where this study could go further. So again, my sample size was 5 brands, and this is nowhere near representative or generalizable, but I think it does warrant further study in these 3 key areas. So first is the idea that brands were rating these non-extractive value initiatives, these activities, these ideas as more important than they were actually doing them. So there was a mean difference of negative 0.32, and that's not a super low number, but it does reveal that NEV is not as in practice as I would like it to be or as we would like it to be. And this can be due to potentially low resources and structural barriers in the fashion industry. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard of the difficulties when it comes to mapping out your supply chain, understanding your impacts, even up to scope 3. I don't think anyone has done a comprehensive view of this unless you completely own your entire supply chain. And the second idea, kind of coming from those structural barriers also, is that there were low scoring dimensions for climate, capital, and strategic resilience. So yes, non-extractive value may not enhance resilience in these areas, right? It may not make businesses more financially ready. It may not add to their strategy right now, but it could also reveal that there can be internal gaps in communication within fashion brands. Maybe finance is not talking to the marketing department as often as they should be. Maybe the design team isn't really far removed or is really far removed from the shareholders in the conversation of what is the impact of their value creation. And from communication, I find that there's a really cool incidental result of this research, and that's the idea of personal resilience. So all the expert interviews that I had were always talking about some sort of idea of burnout or overwhelm. And when I later found in my survey that NEV does impact emotional persistence and motivation in a positive way, I think this could be further explored. As sustainability professionals, as researchers in this space, we have a lot on our plate. We're constantly working in a system that sometimes it doesn't feel like they believe in what we're doing. And if we can have an impact or research on a further context, how we can impact our personal resilience as individuals for the better, I think that could be extremely valuable because I believe that if we are not resilient as individuals, fashion as a system, as an industry, it will never be. So now this leads me to the end and the culmination and the implications of my results. I think rests in this three-part framework that I've created for brands. So this is kind of a practical ending to this entire research and understanding what are some practical use cases to implement non-extractive value. How does that work? How does it look like? And the first part is discerning. So it's understanding what are the context appropriate initiatives that we could implement for our business or for our organization. Do you have enough output or resource output that meets quality standards for recycling, right? Your fabric, whether it's your trims, your materials, do you even have enough product to run a repair or a resale program? Do you have solid enough relationships with your community and your supply chain to invest in it, to have and pursue certifications? So this is a very strategic first step. And my brand four, so from the follow-up interviews, they're a social enterprise on the West Coast, and in they're focused on sorting and collecting textile waste. So this can be textile waste from post-consumers, from factories. They work hand in hand with businesses and just understanding getting their returns. And they have three different routes. They either take it and they train their trainees and understanding what's the quality and the value thresholds. Is it just going to go to recycling? Are we donating this? Or is it going on our wholesale website or even resale? They partner with Poshmark. And they actually built a logic that uses discernment first. And they actually route fast fashion directly to donation. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have been in a thrift store and you see like H&M and Zara everywhere. And there's a lot of resale value for the most part because these things are trendy. Some of these things can last longer if they're only worn once or twice. But they have a social mission that wants to, one, not continue fast fashion, so not continue the sale of it. But two, they found that it consistently doesn't meet the recycling quality requirements, nor the wholesale quality requirements. So it's, again, discerning, not just based in their social mission of, okay, let's not continue fast fashion, but it's discerning that, yes, it can be valuable for other people, but it's not valuable for us. So they go straight towards donating for fast fashion. Discerning in operations. The second part is integrating. And this is talking about openly sharing climate and financial data. So that internal gap within brands of how departments are talking to each other. And from the survey and these follow-up interviews, I found that a lot of brands have very little idea of the impact of their sustainability initiatives, and specifically how those initiatives prepare them for future crises. So we need more open-sourced climate and financial data shared regularly across teams, even within organizations, let alone externally. That's your reporting and your certifications and things like this. So as an example, my brand one, they're the large fashion incumbent, and they're have multiple countries, multiple headquarters around the world. They found that it was easiest when sharing this financial data, when sharing the climate data on trying to get buy-in for sustainability, to translate the sustainability language. And I thought this was a great kind of best practice or in practice tool. So when they're talking about sustainability across their organization, they have to translate it into different priorities for different teams. So when speaking to the finance team, that's understanding how much CapEx or capital expenditure that they have to spend. So how much money do they have to spend, or how much money are they saving? When you're talking to the design team, it's about, okay, we want these preferred materials, but what creativity do these materials allow? When you're speaking to the technologists, sustainability means something different for them, right? They're creating the tech packs. They're understanding how the garment goes through production. Maybe it's speaking about durability. So you're talking about the abrasion tests, the color fastness, the strength of the fibers. So it's about translating what sustainability means to different teams. And as long as that information is shared, the better the internal engagement and the better the approach is towards non-extractive value. And the last part is adapting. So when implementing something as ambitious as NEV, as this type of value, no one brand can do it the same. There's a whole different range of organizations and labor unions and brands that we have around the world. And I found that, yes, the size of the brand does matter. So whether you're a small or a large brand, but the legal structure, the governance matters more. So the question isn't how much employees or how many employees do you have or how large your supply chain is. It's whether your legal structure enables longer term value creation or short term extraction. At the end of the day, if you have a traditional ownership structure, right, you have shareholders, you're legally obligated to produce returns for those shareholders on a timely basis, right? But if you have, let's say, a B Corp certification or a social enterprise, or maybe even a smaller sized business with limited owners or limited investment, that can be a different story. So I found that larger brands breaking goals into smaller chunks, or smaller brands even kind of talking to those shareholders and having the owners in recent sustainability conversations can really move the needle here. And as an example of what this looks like in a large brand, so brand one again, and they're again situated around the world, they actually made their sustainability goals a game. So internally, within their different departments, so they have, let's say, jeans department, skirts department, dresses department, they made it a game as to who can reach the 65% preferred fiber mix internally. So they wanted 65% of all the fibers that they use as a business to be from alternative sources. So that's recycled fibers, certified fibers, or natural fibers, trying to move towards sustainability, right? They said, all right, jeans versus skirts versus dresses. Who can reach 65% first by the end of the year? So in the interview that I had with the brand representative, they actually revealed it got quite intense. And the winner had to, bring in food for everybody, or the loser had to buy, food or snacks or whatever it was. But it actually increased internal engagement significantly. When you're trying to communicate sustainability in a large brand and move towards something so ambitious, such as non-extractive value, making it a game and making work fun, making reaching goals fun is a great way to increase that internal buy-in and move towards non-extractive value. So in this example, jeans won because they hit 70% and skirts lost because they had 67.5. Overall, in the end, what I want this work to stand for is making a numerical and empirical business case for sustainability. If we're increasing the non-extractive value that we offer as a fashion industry, and we're decreasing that physical product, that extractive value, we can achieve the transformation that fashion needs, demonstrated by changes in resilience. So if we're growing in NEV, it means we can grow in our cultural commitments. We can grow in how we learn. We can grow in our events. We can even grow in how we are personally resilient ourselves. Who doesn't need that? I loved producing this type of work that builds a practical and capabilities approach to sustainability, and this is exactly the type of change that I want to be a part of in my future. I will be again submitting the final written version for this later this summer, and thank you for your time. I'd love to discuss any questions that you guys have.
Wow, thank you so much, Ariel. Excellent research. I enjoyed listening to it, and yeah, it's very like it's tapping the very important part and topic, and I really enjoyed listening to it. So I opened the part for everyone to ask Ariel question or give her feedback, discuss the topic within the group. So if anyone has a question or feedback, just you can just turn on your mic and talk, or write it in the chat, whatever it suits you better. And by the way, Ariel, there was some comments while you were talking, and they were all like confirming what you explained.
Oh, yeah, I'm just reading them now. Thank you.
So, is there any question for Ariel? So, there is one question in the chat. Can you give more examples of an EV?
I can, and I think and it's also a little bit industry agnostic if you're thinking about it. So what does any organization do that offers value in a different way that's not physical in non-academic terms? That can be an employee well-being program. So even offering childcare, even offering things like a comprehensive health insurance for your internal well-being of your employees. That's offering resources to your community. So some fashion businesses, and I think even in Berlin, there were a couple that had a cafe or working space in the back of their store. And as a student at the time, I loved just to go in. I think Arquette had a cafe, was it? Or Asket? I think it was Arquette. I had a classmate that went to their cafe all the time, and she'd bring in all these like little cups. And that's the type of value that we're trying to look at, we're trying to build because we're an industry that's so rooted in the extractive traditional value. Like, what else can we offer? And if you're looking outside, I think businesses also have a lot of great initiatives in nonprofit partnerships. So whether that's hosting a volunteering day or donating profits of a certain day towards a certain cause, those are the types of value that exemplify non-extractive value. It can be anything.
So there is another question from Katie is business run on performance metrics. How would you advise them to measure to impact of NEV internally?
Mm. I think the question of metrics is extremely important, and that's something that I'm also going to be speaking about at FIT. I work with them in terms of coming in and giving workshops to their students, and there's a class that's called Making the Business Case for Sustainability. When you're making a business case, and I'm sure many of you know, when speaking to an executive, they have 5 minutes to listen to you. They have 5 minutes to see whatever results you have. When you put it into a metric, like let's say if you're and it depends who you're speaking to. When you're speaking to finance, it's CapEx. When you're speaking to design, it's these colorways or these materials. For my social enterprise, for example, they're situated on the West Coast. They train individuals and offer education and resources in textile collection and sorting. So their metric of performance of NEB, let's say, is how well are our trainees, our employees, how well are they learning? So they have a graduation rate or they have an intake rate of how many people are doing well in their training courses and as an employee later on. So that's their metric and it depends on their mission. So for another business, and let's say it's a traditional owned fashion brand for example, my brand one, my large brand, they quantified it as 65%. That is their alternative fiber mix. Yes, they're still producing traditional product, but the way that they could approach non-extractive value was breaking it down into smaller chunks. And if that was over half of their materials are recycled or from a certified seller of sustainable fabrics, great. And I think devising those metrics really has to do with what's important to the organization first. Are they a shareholder business? Are they B Corp? Are they a social enterprise? And finding out what matters to them. So is it, how well is the social mission being achieved? Can you quantify that? That's their graduation rate of their trainees. Or is it your alternative fiber mix? How much of your product can be recycled? How much of your product is from a sustainable source? How much of your product is certified? And it really comes down to their mission, again, what they're focused on.
Thank you, Ariel. Um, I don't know if anyone else has a question, but maybe I
If
can
not,
ask
I have a
them.
couple of questions for people.
You have couple of questions. Okay,
Yeah,
you
I
can
do.
ask. But can I ask you a question regarding the size of these businesses that you did interviews with? So I've heard that there were like different sizes, right? Did I understand it right? Okay, so did you realize a difference between like how they deal with these kind of initiatives, and if was there a difference between like organizations with different sizes, and what was the most interesting difference that you have seen during the interviews?
I think, and I have to, so a lot of, only one business did agree for their name to be shared. A lot of them didn't. So I have to phrase this in a way that kind of still keeps them anonymous. There, there are real limitations when it comes to if you are public versus if you are privately owned. So if you're
Mhm.
privately owned, you have a little bit more flexibility in understanding what the owner of the brand is looking for and who you're invested by. So if you have, let's say, a traditional bank or venture capitalist backing, you have that legal obligation to produce returns. Sometimes, if it is a smaller business, you have more access to the shareholders and to the executive board to kind of bring up these initiatives saying, hey, this is kind of our idea. This would bring, more traction to the website. This would bring more people to come out to events. The large fashion brand actually, they started making really big waves in non-extractive value in actually in-person events. So they had stores all around the world. Their stores actually became a hub for classes, for events after school or after work. That's how they started, and that's how they brought it up to their shareholders and their executive board. Hey, these are events, these are bringing people to our store, but it's also increasing their community. And that was translated into whether that was sales or whether that was, whatever the shareholders were looking for in terms of their metrics. That was larger brands. Private brands, there was one that I didn't get to interview. They were based in London. They had maybe 4 or 5 employees, including the two owners, and it was a husband and wife. They had an amazing story. They had the freedom to say, you know what, we're going to go on summer vacation. Like we
Mm.
can stop all production. We can still have everybody, paid for the summertime. So there's that level of how many layers of approval do you have to go to? How far removed are the executives? And I think that's also a metric for getting things done in a business of any size. That was the main difference. It was how many people do they have to go through to kind of get this approved? And unfortunately, if we're still operating in capitalism, so there are a lot of limitations. But the size of the brand, yeah, it came down to how far removed were those shareholders, were the executive board. If the owners are right there in the conversation, it was easier to get things approved. It was easier to get things on the table and get them moving. But if they were farther, it had to take, 6 months to a year for approval. And that was the struggle. And sometimes a lot of consumers don't see that. They kind of look at the social media, they look at, the good on you ratings or the sustainability reports, and they're kind of not seeing a lot of progress when there's internal people within these organizations, the brands that we all know and sometimes we all love. They've been fighting for approval for something for years that we would just never see, but just because there's so many layers of approval that they have to go through.
Thank you, Ariel. So there are two more questions in the chat. Karina asks you, how can new businesses start having resilience as a core priority? And there is a second question about if you could give us examples of any brand that could act as a role model for NEV efforts. So I leave it to you to answer these questions as you wish.
Thank you for these questions. If it's a new business, and I think I'll flip back to where, let me see if I can flip back. A lot of slides. If you're looking at resilience, I would first, as a business, understand what is resilience. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But I think breaking it down into these components would make it a little bit easier to understand. So it is how much cash reserves do we have, for example? How much debt are we in as a business? How quickly can we get out of that? And I think that's the financial piece is a really big struggle for a lot of new and maybe smaller brands. Then it is looking at your strategy. How prepared are you for a crisis? Map out those crises, right? Like your funding is cut for a year. Your main supplier, your main vendor is now upping their price. What does that look like? Can you model these scenarios and look at your resources and see what you have? I think it's also looking at your cultural and emotional resilience. How committed are your employees? Do you have a large retention rate? Are people staying within your business? Or is there kind of a turnover where people are just coming in, they're like, all right, 2 years, then I'm leaving. What makes people stay? What makes your business unique in that sense. And I would think the most important part of resilience is actually the capability to learn, accepting that you're not going to do everything perfect, but accepting to be open to learn. That's that continuous growth over here on the right. It's and it's also very personal and it comes into real life, right? Like you cannot grow as a person if you're not open to learn and take criticism and take feedback. That's, I think, the biggest feature of resilience. And that's why I love this definition, that it's a process made up of multiple working parts. Um, and for the question on any brands that are a role model, I have to keep those anonymous. So I'm thinking there was a brand that was recently acquired by a larger one. They're called Early Majority. They are a brand that I partnered with for my first piece of research. They actually had a membership-based business model for fashion garments. So you pay a membership fee every year and you'd get access to, they had webinars online. They had constant Zoom calls that were open with their suppliers and manufacturers, which I have never seen from a fashion brand. They were amazing and they had, you know, certified fabrics and amazing durable products. I'm forever a fan of them. I'm not sure of their next steps since they're them being acquired, but I love Early Majority. I can put them in the chat. They were covered by Vogue as fashion's first degrowth brand, which I thought was really cool. But there's a lot of different social enterprises also within fashion, public benefit corporations that are doing amazing things. I just can't think of them right now.
Thank you, Ariel. Okay, if there is no other, okay, if there's no other question for the moment, you can ask us your question, Ariel. I'm excited to hear what you want to ask us.
When it comes to redefining growth, I'm just wondering what other works or research has people seen on this topic, and what do they think? Do they think we can actually redefine the way that we view financial growth, or is that kind of a pipe dream in our current economy? What works have you seen essentially?
Good question. Does anyone
Any
have an
report
answer?
or like an article or something that they saw that was interesting? So, growth is a contested subject.
I know that some of our network members are working on this, specifically on this topic, but
Mhm.
like right now, I don't have anything on the top of my head. But I will actually, that's a great question, and I think I would then look into that, and maybe we can exchange emails on this. Actually, we were
Yeah,
thinking about like having an email server. That's another topic, so that we can all be like we can all send each other like those kind of resources, and like if we know anything like this. But yeah, I will definitely send them to you later.
yeah,
But if anyone else has something right away in to answer this question, please do so or write it in the chat so that everyone can see and have it for later. Okay, it seems that everyone needs time, Ariel.
that's all good.
Okay, but yeah, that's a really great question. Like I think it's always nice to share those kind of like articles and research and projects that we know about one topic with each other. And that's what we were doing before in our network, and I hope that we can bring it back because it's like really useful for all of us. Do you have any other question for us?
Hmm, I do. Um, what was the most interesting part of this presentation, or the most challenging part? Just so I know for future reference.
Does anyone like to answer this question?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I really appreciated the way that you discussed your samples, but or sorry, when you did the survey responses, I think the visual, I loved that you added that component, but one thing I would add is maybe just adding in more graphics to show the results a little bit. But
Mm.
that's it. I thought it was so fascinating to just see the questions that you did ask and then all of the results that you got from the surveys. So everything has been super interesting. And I really also love the organizational resilience component that you have here, just so like we understand exactly what it means to continuously grow, but essentially like conscientiously and ensuring that there's resilience within the organization. So thank you. This has been super helpful.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, it's always a challenge when you have multiple Excel spreadsheets and you're like, okay, how do I put this onto a slide? But yeah, a couple screenshots here and there additionally wouldn't hurt. So thank you. I'll take that into consideration.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or feedback? Okay, I can also say that I really like the way you presented the definitions and theoretical part. You made a great job, like generally with the presentation of this like huge like study. But also I really liked the way you presented like the definitions and the theoretical part, and then took it to the empirical part of your research. You did a great job in that, and I really liked your presentation. It was like very easy to follow and understand, and very interesting results that you shared with us. Thank you so much, Ariel.
Thank you.
And if there is no other comment or question, I would say that we can then stop it here. But I would like everyone to ask everyone, please continue this conversation with each other. And if you have other projects or research that might be interesting for Ariel, please send her an email. I think if you don't have her email, please email us so that I can send it to you, because I'm not sure how, if it's okay to send her email around. But if you want to be in contact, you can definitely send an email to us and we can connect you. But
Absolutely.
anyways, I would really like to thank you, Ariel, for the great presentation. It was so interesting and insightful. And I would like to thank everyone else for joining us today. And yeah, I would say let's keep in touch and continue working together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was an honor, and I'm happy to have this recorded and can't wait to share it with everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Ariel. I think everyone's left. Thank you so much. How do you feel about the webinar? Was it okay? Oh, I stopped recording, I think.